We are now 10 rounds into the AFL fantasy season and we still have 14 to go. But this week was another really good one for me. I scored a 2,183, which moved me up in ranks again to just outside 3,000. It was a round rank of 7,600, so it's not incredible, but still pretty good. Starting it off, we have Dane Zorko, who ended up scoring 109 after a very hot start. He got to 75 at halftime, but scored just 34 points in the final half, which is unlike him. He usually starts slow and builds, but now this time. Still a good score though, and I can't be unhappy about that. Lockie Ash finally delivered for me this week, after a few sores around the 90s there. I didn't get to watch this game, but I've noticed that he can be really hot and cold with the scoring. Like he'll go half a quarter without touching it and then rack up 30 points instantly. It's quite interesting. He also seems to cap out at 115 because he rarely has 4 big quarters. Like he started really well with 33, then 19, then 38, which came late in the third, and finally 20. When he was on 90 at halftime, I thought maybe it would have been a big one, but given they were losing, they wouldn't have done all of that last quarter chip marking that you sometimes get. On Friday night, Matt Roberts was a bit disappointing, only scoring the 73 points. He's been really good recently, and I did not see this coming. That's actually his lowest score for the season now, but I don't think anyone would be thinking of trading because we have far greater problems, which I'll get into a bit later on. I think he's one who goes in round 14 on his bye. Nick Martin was really good in a game where Essendon were absolutely demolished. He didn't start that great or anything, and it looked like it would be a score in the 90s, but he scored 30 or so early in the fourth and managed a 105, which I'm pretty happy with there. And in the same game, Zach Reed scored an 82 after a slow start. He's just so good and is making up for sitting on our benches injured all last year. But seriously, he's averaging 97 in his last 3. Those aren't rookie numbers. He's a gun. So then, Luke Traynor did show some rookie numbers, although they weren't exactly his fault. He scored just 50 points before getting subbed out in the third quarter, and it might have been a decent score in the end. He hit his break even, but is poised as someone who can go for an upgrade this week. And on the bench, Saad El Hali got subbed out at halftime on 29, which just doesn't make sense to me. He'd had 9 touches, and there were plenty of people doing a whole lot worse. I think he'll be fine long term and will come back into the team eventually. But that's killed the cash gen from his good score last week. To the midfield. Now Nick Dacos is an annoying one. I traded him in for that big 131, which I captained, and then he got a 120. I thought he was such a good pick and was convinced he would score great for the rest of the year. But no. Since then, he's averaged 80 with a high score of 92. It's actually becoming a problem because he gets locked down so easily with these tags, and as a guy who relies on cheap ball to score, that is not a good thing at all. I am so impressed with Andrew Brayshaw. He's an absolute gun. Ordinarily 103 is a good score, but not great, and maybe even a bit underwhelming. Well, not this week, because he started with a 6 points first quarter and a 30 points first half. He then clawed it back brilliantly to finish with a ton, which as I said is just great to see. Like last week, he had a lot of handballs again, but really I can't complain about his performance too much. Someone I will complain a bit about is Harry Sheasel. We heard during the week that he wouldn't be on the halfback, so it wasn't unexpected, but I still thought he'd have a big score against Richmond of all teams. Just 20 touches for him, which is by far his season low, and he was only saved by 10 tackles, which got him to a 102. He was on 90 very early in the fourth too. I guess the contested game style just wasn't great for his game. And, yeah, another average score from him. Connor Rozee was extremely solid, scoring 109 against the Cats. 32 touches and 7 marks is really great to see, and this role is treating him well. However, Port got absolutely thumped and find themselves 14th, so some things could get shuffled, especially with the injuries that they sustained. With that said, I think the halfback move was a really good one. From a strategic sense, it's just everything else that isn't working out for Port. And in the other Adelaide team is Rankin, who scored a decent 89. Nothing to write home about, but far from bad. Apart from Dawson, who is ruining my season, no one really scored well that game, so he's actually done all right in the end. And the brother of Nick, we have Josh Dacos, who I got last week, and he continues to disappoint. I thought he was a bargain when he was priced at 94, and now he's averaging 76 for me, which is just wonderful. He doesn't really have that great of a role. Like, he gets plenty of touches, but I wanted him to be the main halfback, commanding the kickouts and all that. 29 touches and only 80 points. That's more disposals than Dawson in the same game, and he scored 60 points more. That's the real problem. Josh just doesn't mark or tackle like he needs to. Someone who did what he needed to, though, was Adam Chera, who finally delivered with 121 points on the Friday night. He didn't start that amazingly, with 19 points in the first quarter, but then he turned it on. 28 points, 43 points, and 33 points in the final 3 terms. Not to mention 29 touches in these quarters. He had 7 tackles for the game, which is also his most for the year. Not quite a ceiling score because he can go much bigger, but really good, and I'm pleased because I was considering an early trade. He'll probably still go at his buy though. I used Hugh Boxall to loop between Reid and Lindsay. First to Xavier Lindsay, who scored 78 points against Brisbane, which was unexpected. He took advantage of the high marks game to do this. It must be said, however, that he required a 41-point quarter to get there, but a good score for Cash Gen. Murphy Reid actually surprised me. He scored 58, and I just took the safe option and fielded him over Lindsay, which cost me 20 points in the end. It sucks that I lost 3 points, but I made the right decision still, with Lindsay averaging less than 40 in his previous 2. Reid had a total of -1 points after the first quarter and 7 at the half, but then he did really well to put up a score that finally wasn't in the 30s. He didn't reach his break-even, but another good score, and he'll start marking some cash again. But now we get to go to my incredible rucks, and that's the first time I've really been able to say that this year. Now for the absolute legend, that is Tristan Xerri. Xerri was my #1 captain option, and I called a 150-plus score, which is why I didn't VC Bailey Smith. Well, I wasn't wrong, and took him as my vice-captain to get over 300 points out of him. He actually scored 96 points in the first half alone, which is just mental stuff, including a second quarter of 61 points. It was a really high stoppage game, and there could have been a record, at least in the first half. 183 tackles for the game, with Xerri having 11. That obviously led to plenty of hitouts, which he benefited from with 52 of them. And it wasn't just him. His opposition, ruckman Toby Nankervis, got in on the action, scoring 147 points with 46 tackles. It honestly could have been a huge one if he'd continued his scoring from the first half, but a game with a lot of tackles and hitouts would be really tiring, so I get it. But yeah, I'm absolutely stoked with that, and it's my biggest captain score for the year now, 155 from the Big X. So I saw Xerri's score coming, but I did not expect Rowan Marshall to go that big. I mentioned Xerri scored 61 points in a quarter. Well, Marshall scored 62 in his first quarter, and he was also on 95 at halftime. He ended up with 158 points, which is just about as good of a trade-in as I could have imagined. One of the best stat lines I've seen from Marshall too. 27 touches, which were mostly kicks, 8 marks, 5 tackles, a goal, and of course 40 hitouts. Just brilliant. Another really great score from Bailey Smith with 123 points, and he's now averaging over 119 this year. He just fills his stat line so well. 0 touches, 8 marks, and 5 tackles. I'm glad he didn't do any better because I chose to not put the VC on him and was getting a bit scared when he was on 102 with a quarter to go, but he slowed down enough, and I really made the right decision to avoid him because going Xerri instead gained me 62 points, which is great. Christian Petracca had his first bad score in a while, with 84 points despite registering his highest disposal count this year with 31 touches. He just couldn't get the marks or tackles required, but he's playing good footy, so that's all right. Another 84 came from Jack McRae, who is just going to be one of the most inconsistent players this season. Runs of poor scores and then huge ceilings. He also didn't get many marks or tackles, and he's actually averaging under 100 this season now, but he's still top 6. So we knew that Horn Francis was a bit injured during the week, but he was named and played. He probably shouldn't have though, because he suffered a hamstring injury after playing just 12% of the game for a score of 11. That's not good for him, and he'll miss some time now. I think he's going to be a forced trade now, but most people have him, so you aren't alone as an owner. Then Levi Ashcroft scored 82 points, which is a great score for a rookie. He's really picked it up recently, averaging 94 in his last 3. I think he might be someone we can hold until his bye, and he's made so much cash this year, which will continue to rise. The most disappointing score this week came from my trade in Matthias Philippou, who scored just 50 points in what should have been a good matchup. He played just 59% time on ground, which I believe was due to a finger injury and probably just Ross Lyon doing his thing for no reason. The Pooh just couldn't get any touches and gave away frees. I was hoping for like 200 from him and Marshall combined, which I got. I just didn't expect it to be split like this. And Caden Cleary dropped another stinker as my emergency, which is annoying, as at the time I was really looking for a rookie to stand up so I could loop them on field. He didn't deliver, scoring 36, which has killed his cash gen put. He's now ready to be upgraded, I think. So there is the team, 2,183, and just like last week, I scored. Well, despite a lot going wrong. I didn't have Dawson, I fielded 350s, and the 11, but everyone had that. I also had guys like Josh Dacos, Nick Dacos, Rankine, Petraka, Roberts and McRae, who all flopped. And yet I still did well. After Dawson got that 138 and I was stuck with the Dacos brothers, I thought it was going to be a really bad week, so to come back and have a round rank under 8,000 is really great. Obviously, that Zeri captain is what got me there, along with Marshall's magnificent 158, which got me 468 points from just my rucks. But I also had good scores from guys like Ash and Martin, who aren't exactly pods, but they aren't popular either, and that really helped. Looking at my trades, I'm glad I got off Bice. He put up a decent score, but will lose cash, and he got me to Philippou, who failed in the end, but should have been a good pick in theory. I didn't really want Philippou, but with TDK out, I just made a quick decision, and he's what I came up with, but I wish I'd gone to Coleman or even just down to Simpson, who was a great rookie. I'm also glad I banked cash because I might need it now as we need to move Horn Francis on. But the trade from TDK to Marshall is one of the best instant sugar hit trades I've ever had. It just could not have worked out better, and I was going to go Jackson, but I had a mate luckily convince me otherwise. For the plus and minus 3, it should be pretty obvious because I've hinted at both already. The plus 3 has got to be Zeri, edging out Marshall just due to the captaincy factor, but both were phenomenal. And the negative 3 will go to Philippou, who let me down on debut. Now let's go over to the rankings where Jacob has regained the lead, although it's now getting really close up there. A few really big scores have them closing in on the Hilux now. And by the way, I'm 400 points off hat range, which is probably too much for me to chase down now, but if I didn't have that 65,000 round rank and another 40,000, I could have been right up there. I'm actually really pleased with my ranking, considering that I've had a pretty bad year, and lots has not gone my way. Although the tide is turning, and I've done a bit better these last few weeks. And for the round winner, we have Patrick, who scored a 2,491, and if you have a look at this team, just about everything went right. He had all the huge scores, none of the bullets. Imagine if he'd captained Zeri or Marshall instead of Dawson. Crazy stuff. Then heading over to the Open League. Jacob leads, of course, and Herbie has slipped to 74th. We've got 10 inside 1,000 and 40 of you inside 5,000. I've also moved into 25th now. So then back to the teams to have a quick look at what trades I'm thinking of. Horn Francis has to go, I think. He'll be out a while and will leak cash. And I really need to get Simpson in because we have no rookies. And he's a really good cash cow, so he needs to come in. I will then make an upgrade with probably Caden Cleary, and I could get anyone, but I think I'll bite the bullet and get Jordan Dawson. It's pretty much because of the round 15 bye and how I have very few people on it. I also think Coleman could be a good get, but Yeah, I think Simpson is definitely the priority. That will be all for today, and I'll see you back here on Thursday for some trades.